new kid walks into school, hoping for a fresh start, but instead, he's met with cruel whispers, racist taunts, and a gang of bullies who think they own the hallways. What they don't know is that this quiet boy carries a fire inside him, one that will turn humiliation into triumph, and make him unstoppable. This is the story of Marcus, the boy who rose above hate and shocked everyone. "Who's the new kid?" whispered one of the boys in red varsity jackets as the school hallway buzzed with chatter. The sound of sneakers squeaking against the polished floor mixed with the slamming of lockers and the constant hum of teenage voices. Marcus had just transferred to Lincoln High. He clutched the strap of his backpack a little tighter as he walked, scanning the unfamiliar faces, trying to memorize the endless rows of classrooms. He was tall for his age, with sharp, determined eyes and a quiet confidence in the way he carried himself. He wore a simple brown jacket, nothing flashy, nothing that should have drawn attention. But there was one reason he stood out. He was the only black student in a mostly white school. As Marcus moved down the hallway, conversations seemed to shift. Students glanced his way, their expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion. Some tilted their heads as if sizing him up, while others whispered behind their hands. He kept his gaze forward, pretending not to notice, but every glance felt like a spotlight on his back. Finally, he reached his locker. He turned the dial, focusing on the numbers his mom had scribbled for him that morning. But before he could open it, a shadow fell across the metal door. A group of boys with matching red varsity jackets stepped in close, their smirks wide, their eyes sharp. They were clearly the kind of kids who ruled the school, the type whose presence cleared hallways and silenced laughter. "Hey, new guy," one of them sneered, pressing a hand firmly on Marcus's shoulder. "You lost or something? Don't remember seeing you around here." His voice dripped with mock friendliness, but the push against Marcus's shoulder told the real story. Marcus turned his head slowly, locking eyes with him. He didn't flinch, didn't scowl, he just looked at him with quiet steadiness. The other boys chuckled, circling like wolves around their prey. One of them leaned in, sniffing exaggeratedly before laughing. "Smells different, doesn't he?" Another elbowed his friend and whispered loudly enough for Marcus to hear, "Bet he won't last a week here." Wrong school for someone like him. The hallway wasn't completely silent, students were still moving, but many had slowed their steps, watching from the corners of their eyes. Some faces looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. Others smirked, entertained by the unfolding drama. The boy who had shoved Marcus against the wall leaned closer, his face inches away. "What's the matter? Cat got your tongue? Or are you just too scared to speak?" Marcus stayed calm. His expression didn't betray fear, only silence. He let the words slide over him like water off a stone. But inside, his stomach tightened. He wasn't scared, not exactly, but he understood something important in that moment. This place wasn't going to be easy. He thought back to the morning before school. His mom had straightened his jacket and said softly, "Remember, Marcus, you're strong. You don't have to prove it to anyone. Just be yourself." Her words echoed in his mind now as he stood pressed against the cold wall, surrounded by sneers and laughter. One of the boys slapped the locker next to Marcus's head with a loud clang, making a few nearby students jump. "You'll learn quick, new guy. Lincoln High has rules. And rule number 1, know your place." They all laughed again, shoving past him as though dismissing his very existence. Their red jackets disappeared into the crowd, leaving Marcus standing alone. He exhaled slowly, steadying himself. He adjusted his backpack, finally opened his locker, and quietly pulled out his books. He didn't let his hands shake. He didn't let them see that he'd heard every word. Marcus knew something the bullies didn't. He had been underestimated before. Back in his old neighborhood, he'd faced tougher challenges, harder streets, and people who had told him he'd never make it. Every time, he had proven them wrong. Now, as the hallway settled back into its rhythm, Marcus closed his locker and walked to class. His face was calm, his steps measured. But inside, a fire had started to burn. Because while the bullies saw him as an easy target, Marcus knew the truth. He wasn't weak. He wasn't broken. He was simply waiting for the right moment to show them who he really was. And when that moment came, they'd regret ever pushing him against that wall. At first, Marcus thought maybe things would settle down. Maybe the boys in the red varsity jackets had just been testing him, trying to see if the new kid would crack. After all, high schools were full of posturing and attitude. He told himself to keep his head down, focus on his classes, and ignore the whispers. But it didn't stop. In fact, it grew worse. The next day at lunch, Marcus carried his tray carefully, looking for an empty seat. Most tables were filled with familiar friend groups, and his presence drew quick stares. Just as he spotted a corner table, Ryan, the same boy who had shoved him yesterday, stepped into his path. With a sly grin, he accidentally bumped into Marcus, spilling milk across the tray. The carton tipped, splashing all over Marcus's food. "Oops," Ryan said, not bothering to hide his smirk. "Clumsy, huh? Better watch where you're going." The cafeteria erupted in laughter. Marcus tightened his grip on the tray, holding it steady even as milk dripped onto the floor. He wanted to lash out, to say something, but he remembered his mother's words, "Be yourself, stay strong." Without a word, he walked to the trash can, dumped the ruined food, and left the cafeteria. His silence didn't make the bullies lose interest. It made them bolder. Over the next few weeks, their games escalated. Sometimes they would block his locker, standing shoulder to shoulder, daring him to push through. "Sorry, no access today," they'd joke, grinning like they owned the place. Other times, they'd mutter comments when he walked past in the hallway. "Wrong neighborhood, man. Hey, you trying to join the team? Don't think they take your kind. Bet he won't last long here." The words stung, but Marcus refused to let them see it. He kept walking, kept focusing on his books, his classes, and the bigger picture. But ignoring them didn't mean he wasn't affected. At night, lying in bed, Marcus replayed every cruel laugh, every shove, every insult. The walls of his new room felt smaller, quieter than his old home. Sometimes he wondered if transferring had been a mistake. And yet, he had a fire inside him that wouldn't go out. When the world grew quiet, Marcus slipped into the garage. There, hanging from the ceiling, was an old punching bag his uncle had given him years ago. It had scratches, duct tape patches, and worn-out seams, but it was enough. Marcus wrapped his fists, planted his feet, and started to punch. Thud. 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 Each strike echoed in the garage. Each punch carried the frustration he bottled up during the day. Every insult fueled his rhythm, every shove added power. Sweat dripped down his face, but he kept going until his arms burned. He wasn't just training his body, he was training his mind. He ran sprints in the mornings, pushing his legs to move faster, imagining outrunning the boys who mocked him. He lifted weights in the evenings, building strength he knew he might one day need. But most importantly, he reminded himself every time he looked in the mirror, "I'm not weak. I won't be broken. This is just the beginning." Meanwhile, at school, the bullies noticed he wasn't reacting the way they expected. Instead of snapping or breaking down, Marcus just kept showing up, quiet and steady. That made them uneasy. Bullies thrived on fear, and Marcus wasn't giving them any. So they pushed harder. One day, as Marcus sat in the library, trying to study, a paper airplane landed on his desk. He unfolded it to find crude drawings and slurs scribbled inside. He folded it back silently, tucked it in his notebook, and returned to his work. The boys watching from across the room frowned. Why wasn't he exploding? What they didn't know was that Marcus was waiting. He wasn't going to give them the easy victory they wanted. He wasn't going to crack under pressure. Deep inside, he knew something they didn't. Every insult, every shove, every cruel laugh was only making him stronger. Because Marcus had faced worse than this before. And he had no intention of losing now. The games were cruel, yes. But they were also fueling the fire of something the bullies couldn't see yet. Something unstoppable was building inside Marcus. And when the moment came, it wouldn't be Marcus who broke, it would be them. Friday afternoon. The bell had just rung, and the hallways of Lincoln High buzzed with the sound of lockers slamming and students rushing for the weekend. For most kids, it was the start of freedom, 2 days away from homework and teachers. But for Marcus, it was the moment he had been dreading all week. As he walked out toward the parking lot, clutching his backpack straps, he noticed them. The varsity boys. Ryan and his crew leaned casually against the wall, waiting like hunters for prey. The smirks on their faces told Marcus everything. This wasn't going to be a casual bump in the hallway. They had planned this. Ryan stepped forward, his red jacket catching the afternoon sunlight. Well, if it isn't the quiet new kid," he said, his voice dripping with mockery. "Thought you could hide behind those books forever, huh?" The other boys chuckled, forming a semicircle around Marcus. Students passing by slowed down, whispering, pulling out their phones. A crowd was forming. Ryan shoved Marcus in the chest, forcing him a step back. "This is our school. You don't belong here." Marcus's jaw tightened. He wasn't scared anymore, he was angry. Weeks of insults, shoves, and humiliation weighed heavy in his chest, but he forced himself to stay calm. His voice, when it came, was steady and low. "Touch me again," he said, staring Ryan straight in the eye, "and you'll regret it." The crowd went silent. They weren't used to hearing Marcus speak, let alone stand up for himself. Even Ryan blinked in surprise before letting out a laugh. "You hear that, boys? He thinks he's tough now." Ryan turned to his crew, grinning, then swung a fist toward Marcus's face. But Marcus was ready. Time seemed to slow. He shifted to the side, Ryan's punch cutting through empty air. With lightning speed, Marcus blocked Ryan's arm and countered with a controlled push to his chest. The move wasn't wild or sloppy, it was precise, practiced. Ryan stumbled back, nearly tripping over his own feet, his smirk wiped clean. The crowd gasped. Phones shot up higher, recording every second. Ryan's face turned red with humiliation. "You think that was luck?" he shouted, charging again. He swung harder, angrier this time. But Marcus ducked, dodged, and with another quick move, pinned Ryan's arm behind his back just enough to make him yelp. He didn't hurt him, he just showed control. Gasps turned into murmurs. Some kids even cheered quietly under their breath. Ryan struggled, his pride breaking faster than his strength. Marcus leaned close, his voice calm but sharp. "I told you, don't touch me again." Then he released him, stepping back with steady composure. Ryan spun around, face burning with rage and embarrassment. He wanted to attack again, but something in Marcus's eyes stopped him. It wasn't fear he saw, it was strength. Controlled, unshakable strength. For the first time, Ryan didn't know what to do. The crowd wasn't laughing anymore, they were watching. And in their eyes, Ryan wasn't the powerful leader anymore. He was the boy who had just been beaten at his own game. One of his friends tried to laugh it off. "Come on, Ryan, let's go." "Not worth it." They dragged him away, muttering insults, but their voices carried less weight now. As the varsity boys disappeared into the distance, the crowd erupted. Some students clapped. Others whispered in awe. A few even gave Marcus nods of respect. Marcus adjusted his backpack, his breathing steady. He didn't raise his arms in victory, didn't shout or gloat. He simply walked away, leaving the stunned crowd behind. Inside, though, something had shifted. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. This was the moment Marcus realized he wasn't a victim, he was stronger than the hate, stronger than the bullies, stronger than they ever believed. And the whole school had just witnessed it. By Monday morning, the story had already spread like wildfire. The quiet new kid who never fought back had stood up to Ryan, the untouchable leader of the varsity boys, and won. Whispers filled every hallway. Some students looked at Marcus with wide eyes, impressed by his courage. Others gave him quick nods of respect as he passed, something they had never done before. For the first time, Marcus wasn't just the outsider. He was someone to be noticed. The varsity boys, however, weren't impressed. Ryan's pride had taken a serious hit, and though he tried to laugh it off, his anger boiled beneath the surface. He walked through the halls pretending nothing had happened, but everyone could see it, his reputation had cracked. And the more people respected Marcus, the more Ryan's grip on the school weakened. Marcus didn't gloat. He didn't brag. He didn't even mention what happened. Instead, he poured himself into the things he cared about. Teachers noticed he was sharper in class, always prepared. The track coach, having seen Marcus sprint across the field one afternoon, pulled him aside. "You've got speed, son," the coach said with a grin. "Ever thought about joining the team?" At first, Marcus hesitated. But then he remembered all the nights of training in his garage, the sweat, the pain, the discipline. He nodded. "Yes, sir." From that moment, his focus sharpened even more. Practices were tough, but Marcus pushed himself harder every day. He wasn't just running laps, he was outrunning every insult, every shove, every cruel laugh. And it paid off. Within weeks, Marcus was breaking records in practice. When the first track meet came, he left everyone in the dust, crossing the finish line far ahead of the competition. The crowd cheered, chanting his name. The same students who once laughed at him now shouted with pride. Ryan and his crew watched from the sidelines, their faces sour. They had tried to make Marcus invisible, but now the whole school saw him clearly. Marcus had transformed from a quiet victim into a rising star. He wasn't just surviving Lincoln High anymore, he was thriving. And nothing the bullies did could stop him now. Months passed, and Lincoln High had changed. The once silent new kid, the boy who was mocked, shoved, and cornered, was no longer invisible. Marcus had earned respect, not by fighting back with hate, but by proving his worth through hard work, discipline, and sheer determination. On a bright spring afternoon, the gymnasium buzzed with excitement. The entire school had gathered for the annual awards assembly. Teachers lined the walls, students filled the bleachers, and the air crackled with anticipation. Then, the principal stepped forward, holding a shining trophy. "This year," he announced, "Lincoln High recognizes a student who has not only excelled on the track but has also shown resilience, discipline, and leadership. Please welcome Marcus Carter." The gym erupted. Cheers thundered, applause shook the walls, and Marcus stepped onto the stage. The spotlight hit him, and for a moment, he remembered his very first day, the whispers, the shove against the locker, the mocking laughter. But now, instead of sneers, he was met with celebration. Clutching the trophy, Marcus turned to face the crowd. His heart pounded, but his voice was steady. "When I first came to this school, I didn't feel like I belonged," he said. The room grew quiet. "I was judged, laughed at, and even pushed around. There were moments when I wanted to give up. But I didn't." He lifted the trophy slightly, letting it glint in the light. "I worked harder. I trained. I studied. I stayed true to myself. And I learned something important: respect isn't given. It's earned." The audience hung on his every word. Even Ryan and his varsity crew, sitting in the back, were silent. Their faces were unreadable, anger, maybe shame, but they couldn't deny the truth staring them in the face. Marcus continued. "It doesn't matter what you look like, where you come from, or what people say about you. None of that defines who you are. What defines you is what you do when the world pushes you down. Do you stay down? Or do you rise?" His voice grew stronger, filled with conviction. "I chose to rise. And so can you." For a heartbeat, the gym was completely still. Then the clapping began. First a few, then dozens, then hundreds. The sound rose like a wave, shaking the bleachers. Students leapt to their feet, cheering his name, chanting in unison. "Marcus! Marcus! Marcus!" Marcus smiled, not with arrogance, but with quiet pride. He had no desire to humiliate the bullies. He didn't need revenge. His victory was standing here, stronger than ever, proving them wrong without saying a word. As the crowd roared, Ryan looked down at the floor, his hands clenched in his lap. For the first time, he wasn't the leader, the untouchable one. Marcus had taken that place, not through fear, but through respect. When Marcus stepped off the stage, holding the trophy close, he knew one thing for certain: he had walked into Lincoln High as the outsider. But he had become far more than that. He was unstoppable. Marcus proved that no amount of hate or bullying can break a strong spirit. He didn't fight with anger, he fought with discipline, courage, and resilience, and in the end, he turned from a victim into a true inspiration. If you enjoyed this story, make sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more powerful stories just like this one. Until next time, remember, when life pushes you down, rise back stronger.